Okay, I am back with the next set of characters. The next two that I listed as number 3 of favorites. Even though I'm not entirely sure that's accurate, because like I say, Xi Cheng probably should have been a little higher. Mu Qing possibly even should have been a little higher, although I explained why he's not. And Xi Cheng's reason for being so low, like I say, is a little bit unfair. But okay, the next two characters I'm going to talk about are Li Jicheng from Blue Flame Assault and Liu Yan from Thousand Years for You. Liu Yang is a very complicated character who I really do think should have been lower. Heavily influenced by excitement and heavily influenced by the type of story that is, because I'm drawn to fantasy. It's a little bit unfair that he's so high. Technically, in many ways, he probably should have been switched with Xi Cheng. But there are reasons why I love Liu Yan himself, too, so. But first we're going to talk about Li Jicheng from Blue Flame Assault. Blue Flame Assault is easy to explain what the story's about. It's about firefighters. Funny thing is that it is probably the most unique firefighter show I've ever seen, because it shocked me, because usually firefighter shows, like any kind of show that's based on like an emergency response team, like if it was about EMTs, or if it's about firefighters, or if it's about policemen, or if it's about any of those things like detectives, any of those, usually the highlight and spotlight of the show is the action. Like for firefighters, they're not just firefighters, they're fire and rescue. The focus, and like even soldiers, the focus is the fighting, or if they go out on a rescue mission or something, usually the focus for firemen is when they're fighting the fire, when the fire is happening, or like when they're on their rescue mission because a building collapsed and they're digging people out of the rubble. That's the focus, usually. And all the other character building and all that stuff is the fillers in between, and you're like, okay, let's get back to the action again. And then the action comes in and it's like, oh yeah, and all this stuff. This one was pretty much the exact opposite. They literally interrupted the action several times in order to go back to the regular stuff. And I'm like, that was an odd, like, oh, we're done already? Like, we weren't even, like, they're in the middle of the fire, and something like they do one or two little rescue things in the middle of the fire, and all of a sudden it cuts to the end when they're cleaning up, and I'm like, that happened oh. And I'm, like, trying to remember all the emergencies they actually responded to, and I'm like, I can't, how many were there? How did So, the story itself is interestingly done, and Blue Flame Assault, like, there was a couple of resets in this one that irritated me. A reset, like I say, is when they bring in a whole bunch of new characters, or even if it's just one character, but they start introducing characters again, where you have to like get to know a new character, like because usually at the beginning of a show you get to know the characters, and then from then on it's just character building and stuff that happens. But then sometimes when there's a reset, they introduce a new character that you have to get to know, and you're like, this is a reset. I'm back in the stages of the beginning of the show where I'm getting to know people. Or it's also a reset if the circumstances completely reset, where like I'm suddenly getting used to them being in a new place or in a new job or being at a new something. So the circumstances are completely new and I have to get used to the circumstances all over again. Which often includes a bunch of characters that I used to know disappearing. So there was resets in this one that irritated me, and then I felt like the ending of the show was dragging its feet, because they all knew that the end was right there, the goal was right in front of us, and they're like, baby, we don't want the show to end, so we're going to try to, like, baby steps, and like, oh, look, a shiny rock, and then kind of... So it's not, like, horrible, like, it's not like the story fell apart, like Never Say Goodbye did, but it reset a couple times, and it was kind of annoying. And then in one reset, here again, that's the only time I kind of felt like Jialun's character was taken out of character, because I felt like that whole scenario was nothing but a plot device in order to get his character to move over here. I don't think they had him react to that whole situation properly. I think he was taken out of character in order to like quickly bypass that, because the point wasn't this, it was to get him moved over here, which was unfair to that and slightly took him out of character, which was annoying. But Li Jicheng, what I wrote about him, like, and this was the most recent one I watched, because Blue Flame Assault was the last one that I have actually seen of his main character ones. It's the last one I watched. So while I was watching Blue Flame Assault, what I wrote about him was, his job is a rookie. He starts out as a rookie. So my word starting from the bottom is a shell shock, both in terms of his abilities. I have to watch him start from scratch to become a firefighter, and in terms of maturity. Right at the bottom. This is so weird. Because, yes, every other show that Jialun has ever played in that I've seen, all of his other characters are already at this level. You don't see them starting from the very bottom. They are already mature, they are already skilled, they are already talented, they already have experience in life, they've already been through a whole lot of stuff. He's the only one that starts down here. I'm not positive how old exactly they were saying he is, so I don't know whether he's technically the youngest or not, but he acts like the youngest because of his level of maturity, and I'll get to this in a second. The most unique thing about this character that I'm convinced is true, and one of the things that makes this the most interesting show because of that, but and also in terms of his skills and ability. Because in the show he works with his mother delivering food because his mother runs a restaurant and he rides the bike and delivers food, and but he doesn't have a job, and that's the main thing about his character. Most of the jobs that come up, he would have to travel, and he doesn't want to be away from his mother that often because it's very important to him that he takes care of his mother. In terms of his family, he only has his mother because his father died when he was really young and he's an only child. So his mother is his main top priority, taking care of her, making sure she's okay. But that's why he became a firefighter randomly, because he doesn't have to travel for it. He can stay within the same town and go home and see her and stuff. And I'm like, so putting your life on the line where you could die any second is better than having to travel away for a few months. Okay, dude, that's a little... whatever. That's literally what got him to join. Because at the beginning of the show, he randomly helps. There's a fire in the place that he's at, and he helps rescue a few people, and that got the notice of because a reporter took pictures of him doing it, and the firefighters found out about it, and the head firefighter of that station is like, come, I see potential and talent in you, come. So when it starts out, he's got a hero complex-ish, and he doesn't really take the job seriously, and he doesn't really understand what the job is actually about, etc., etc. So he's right down there at the bottom. He's got no maturity, and he's got no skills or talents. He's starting at the very bottom. You have to watch him in training, learning how to be a firefighter. So it's really weird. I'm telling you, it's weird compared to his other characters. Yes, he's very immature and irresponsible, and he's incredibly reckless and rash. He is the most reckless and rash character of all the characters that Jialun plays. And it takes a lot of hard knocks to make him grow up. But once he does, he's amazing. The most unique thing about him is he's got ADHD. I am convinced that he has ADHD. And to me, this is one of the most unique and well done portrayals of ADHD that I have seen, because most shows, they have to tell you that someone has ADHD, and they make it so over dramatic on the squirrels part of it, and they don't really show you anything else that has to do with it. But this show, they never tell you that he has ADHD, and actually I don't know if the show intended for him to have it. The scriptwriters, I don't know if that was actually in his profile. I don't know if he knows that his character has it. I don't know if his character actually officially has it. To me, watching him, I'm like, he's got ADHD. He is known for being incredibly mischievous. He's constantly pulling pranks. In the show, way near the end, he gets a nickname, and his nickname is Chameleon. That is an ADHD trait, being a chameleon. That is very much ADHD trait, and he's got the nickname Chameleon because near the end of the show, they're like, he's a chameleon, so that's his nickname. And I'm like, oh yeah! And all kinds of things about him. You'd have to watch the show, but I'm convinced that he's got ADHD. And when I said there was two characters, I think I said that in this video, where I said there's two characters of Jialun's where I was like, have I finally found the carbon copy? Because the very first one that I watched him in as a main character was Love a Lifetime, and the last one that I watched was Blue Flame Assault, and I'm like, they feel like a carbon copy. Tell me they aren't. Have I finally found the one that is? Have you failed me, Jialun? And they aren't. Because Nalan Yue in Love a Lifetime does not have ADHD. But Xi Cheng in Blue Flame Assault, I'm convinced, does have ADHD. And I'm like, that is so funny. So the most unique thing about this character is that he's got ADHD. And that is half his problems for most of the show. because that is what happens when you have ADHD. And I mean, like, talk about the adrenaline. And when he, like, ADHD people are like that, like, he's bothered by something and he has to physically, actively get it out of him. Like, he's upset about something and he goes and he's playing basketball by himself for hours on end because he just has to get it out. And he, like, is on the treadmill and he's running and running, and everybody's like, he's gonna physically hurt himself because he can't physically stop. And I'm like, yeah, because he's got so much going on in his head, he has to get it out of his system, and the only way to do that is to make his body active to get it out. And at one point they they bring they're trying to reform the firemen and the rescue and how they work and stuff, and one way they do that is to bring a psychologist into it and do like mental things on them to see where they can improve their thing and where they're at mentally and stuff. And they do a test on him, and this friend that knows him really well, like the psychologist, says he's got like major anxiety and he's not very like self-confident and stuff. And the friend is like, what are you talking about? He's the most like he doesn't have anxiety, he's the most confident person I know. And he's sitting there going, I'm like, yeah, everything that she said in that test, I'm like, ADHD, yup, side effects of coexisting things of ADHD, everything she was saying in there, I'm like, that matches it. And then when it comes to his relationship, like, because he has a love interest in the show, this is one of the ones I was talking about, Autumn Cicada and Blue Flame Assault are the two I'm talking about where there is a love interest, but it's side. The romance story never takes over the show. It's a side thing. It's happening, but the story is bigger than the romance. It's the only two that he's played in where the story is bigger than the romance, because the story is not about the romance. And like I say, I mean, these are the two that are purposely saying we're making this as a dedication to. So it makes sense that the romance doesn't take over. But his romance story, it gets to the point where like it takes forever, because she also has some issues that she was a well done character too, because they set certain things up and she stays very consistently with that. She's one of my favorite female characters in the shows that he plays. So like, spoiler, this is one of my favorite couples, these two. But like it gets, they finally reach the point where like they're finally girlfriend and boyfriend, and like it's to the point where she wants to get married and he kind of wants to get married, but to actually propose to her, there's something in the way there. And I'm like, this is also very much ADHD, because ADHD people have a big problem. It's very difficult to commit to relationships and things like that. Because like they're afraid of the commitment and afraid of like, I mean, it's difficult to handle like romantic relationships and stuff. This is a thing with ADHD people, and there's a whole like, anyway, this isn't supposed to be about ADHD, but yeah, it plays into it there. So like as you're watching the show, if you know anything about ADHD, it's like, it's right there, it's right there, it's right there, it's right there. They keep not blatantly saying, oh yeah, the ADHD and this is why. No, it's just naturally there. He's just naturally an ADHD person. I'm like, this is so cool, because most shows don't do that. They have to specifically tell you that this is the issue. In this one, they don't say it. And that's why I say I'm not even sure if they intended for him to have ADHD or not, but like it's there. I'm convinced that he's got it. And it affects him and it affects the whole story. And I'm like, his character stands out so much because of that. Okay, so we're going to move on to the one that I have tied with him, Luyan from 1,000 Years for You. So next on the list is Gu Chuan from Miss Crow with Mr. Lizard. All this time I thought it was and Mr. Lizard, and then randomly I was trying to film one of the videos and realized it's with Mr. Lizard. I'm like, okay. So I just call it Mr. Lizard for short anyway, because that's a really long name. Miss Crow with Mr. Lizard. This is a character-driven drama, and I am not big on character-driven dramas at all. I don't usually watch character-driven dramas because to me they're really boring. It's day-to-day life. If I want that, I'll go walk out the door. And typically in character-driven dramas, they usually bring in all kinds of stuff that I'm like, These are plot devices that are used way too often, and regularly they don't even really fit with those characters. It's just like, we have to do something within the story, so we're going to throw this problem in, this problem in, this problem in there. And I'm like, that problem and that problem shouldn't have happened because these characters shouldn't have had an issue with that. But anyway, can't be creative enough to bring up some other kind of issue. No, you just have to fall back on the ones that everybody uses. So this one is about a tragedy that happened in the past. I mean, a huge accident where 2 people died and 2 people barely survived. And destiny and fate, the 2 people come back together again in the present. Miss Crow and Mr. Lizard. Her whole life, she has been surrounded by bad luck. Everything she does, like the most ridiculously bad luck things happen to her. Like she tries to open up the door at this like big professional business company place, and she tries to open the glass door, and the glass door shatters to pieces and falls down around her feet for absolutely no reason whatsoever. And everybody's like, that's the kind of bad luck kind of thing she has all the time happen to her. Whereas Gu Chuan is known as Mr. Lizard because he's so cold and so straight-faced and so distant from everybody. He's put a wall up so that he doesn't get close to anybody. Nobody can get close to him. So he is considered this cold-blooded lizard. And so when you just put it that way, it's a very, very, very generic story that's like, yeah, the secondary couple in this one drove me kind of insane because they started out from a good place, but as typical in these shows, they just have to drag it out so that it matches the timeline of everything else, so that you just have to keep dragging it out. So they go through the stupidest back and forth. We're together, no we're not. We're together, no we're not. We're together, no. And it's so petty and so stupid by a certain point of the story, and it just continues and continues and continues. And I'm like, would you stop putting petty things that are like temper tantrums and like 90% their own fault because they're being so petty with each other and etc. And stop it. You put that on the same level as what Gu Chuan and Xiaoning are going through. But the shocking thing about this one that makes it a very unique story is the mechanical heart. Gu Chuan, in the past, when the accident happened, he should have died. The cavity around his heart and everything, because of the accident that happened, it was completely destroyed. They can't even put a new heart in him because like the whole area where the heart's supposed to be put has been destroyed. But it's a very like futuristic kind of feel to it, where supposedly like 400-ish other people in the world have mechanical hearts. So he's not the first one, but it's still not very common. And he gets the mechanical heart put in basically without his say-so, because he's like completely unconscious and out of it. His parents make this decision for him. So he wakes up to a mechanical heart that was put in him without his okay. And this mechanical heart turns out to have unique problems because with this mechanical heart, he is now not allowed to drink anymore. He's not allowed to exercise anymore, and he's not allowed to fall in love with anybody because he doesn't technically have a pulse, but he has like a simulated pulse. And if his heart rate goes up too high, that causes damage to him, as well as he's got an electrical leakage problem. If it goes up to a certain point, other people can feel the electricity, and he like shuts off phones and turns off light bulbs, or turns them on if they were off to begin with. And if it gets too high, people literally go flying when he touches them because he electrocutes them so hard. So that is a very unique and futuristic element to this show that makes it very, very different from a typical kind of show. And that is why he's so cold-hearted. But they do a very interesting job of mixing. Like, this one becomes very personal to me. Watching this one became very personal to me because years ago I wouldn't have understood it and I would not have connected to it the same way. But because of things that have happened for me personally within the past few years, I connected to this one way too much with specifically Gu Chuan's character. And this is one of the reasons why he's up near the top, is because Jialun did too good of a job at portraying this realistically. It's so realistic. His character specifically. Xiaoning is a separate problem. I got really irritated with her because the whole show her character gets to the point of claiming that she understands things. She starts saying that she understands things, but her actions within the same breath prove that she does not understand. And this is the problem with what Gu Chuan is going through. Most people won't understand it, and through no fault of their own, because what he's going through is being so close to death. Like, he had a death experience where he wakes up and he should have been dead. His whole life has been ripped away from him. He can't have super close relationships with people. He was engaged when it happened, and he's not supposed to love anybody anymore. So he pushes his fiancée away because he can't have a romantic relationship with someone, because his own heart and them are in danger if he gets into a love relationship, because his heart rate's going to go up and he's going to hurt himself and he's going to hurt them. So he can't have a relationship with someone. He's literally engaged to someone and he can't even be with her anymore. He's pushing his own parents away, because if he dies again, because his heart is getting weaker and it's malfunctioning and it's not working and he has to charge it every day and it's not holding as much of a charge as it used to, and it keeps malfunctioning and dropping charge with no good reason as this drama goes. The further it goes, the more dangerous it is, and all the rest of this kind of stuff. And it's like, and he's like, I was supposed to be dead already, and now that I'm not, what am I supposed to do? And like, he's literally just floating along in life with like no goal and no purpose and no, like, he literally wrote himself a list of 100 things that he's going to accomplish before he dies, like within this 10 years. And his goal, like, trigger warnings, majorly, massively within this drama, there's trigger warnings all over the place when it comes to death. He was planning on finishing this list of 100 things and then dying. He was planning on letting himself die, or like actively killing himself, or just like, not charging his heart so he dies. That was his goal. His goal was to finish this stuff and at least have like a grand exit because his job, he was previously a photographer, and he used to, like, that's the thing about not being able to exercise anymore. He climbed Mount Everest. He went to Africa. Like, he was a photographer for supposedly like National Geographic or something like that. He had to give up that job because he can't do exercising and can't do excitement anymore. Now he's an architect designer. He's like the head designer in his company. He's the boss besides his best friend, who is like the main investor of the company. Him and his best friend's relationship with the girl that he's with drives me insane. The further it goes, the more insane it drives me. But Gu Chuan and his best friend, that is an epic friend. His friend is epic when it comes to him. There's so many things that he doesn't even really understand, but at the same time, he connects and understands with stuff, and like, this much I can understand and this much I can't, so I'm not going to pretend that I can understand this when I can't, but I'm going to understand this part of it, and I'm going to do my best to make you hang on to this too, because like, you're too important for me to just let go. And it's epic. And like, yeah, all through this, like, it really touched me personally, and it really, really affected me watching. And Jialun did much too epic of a job with this character. Like, he stays so incredibly consistent through good and bad. He is no nonsense. He really does cut to the chase. He says at one point that he's the type that just cuts to the chase. And he does. He tries to give people he cares about chances, but in the end, he still does what should be done. There is a character within this one that thinks that she loves him. I'm like, this is not love. You are so self-centered. You are obsessed, and it's terrible what she ends up doing. But with her, like, she is a friend of his, someone that he has counted as a very close, very dear friend for 7 years. And what she does within the show, she does something that's like, no, she crosses a line. But he gives her a chance. He says, like, the whole company, she has been with this company and she's friends with everybody there. They all really like her. And instead of like exposing her in front of everybody and making everybody hate her, he just says, yeah, somebody, and I suspect somebody here, like, did this, but instead of like confronting them and saying like, right now, come to my office and talk to you, I'm going to give them a chance to come and talk to me. And he like puts it in a vague way that gives like, he's not pointing fingers at her at all. And then he waits for several days, waiting for her to come and talk to him, because he knows without a shadow of a doubt that she's the one that did it. He found proof. He knows that she did these things. And he's waiting for her to come. She doesn't come. Finally, he has to call her. When he calls her, they're in the office together, and he says, I'm still waiting. say something. And she still won't. So he has to break it. And he like very much sets things in place. He tells her more than once, like she says, how did I lose to Jiaoning? Why did she win and become your girlfriend? What am I lacking and all this stuff? And he says, like, it wasn't a matter of winning and losing. You chose the wrong person from the start. Basically, like, outright saying it was going nowhere from the start. It wasn't a matter of winning or losing. I never would have liked you. Even if Xiaoning hadn't come along, you and I never would have been a couple. It just would not have happened. We just aren't the right people for each other in that setting. This is not our relationship. And like, he sets boundaries because she tells him one thing, and as soon as he finds, like, she says, I did this specifically for this, and like, that's crossing a line that he's not okay with, so he puts her back on the other side of the line again. He's like, and it's not like he ever does it cruelly, he just does it very matter-of-factly, like, this is not okay, and I'm putting a stop to it. And I'm like, that is so cool! I love how consistent he is with that. This is okay, this is not, so, move back over there. And he does that multiple ways with multiple different people and all kinds of stuff. The most unique thing about him is his attitude towards death. Because of the trauma he experienced and the way he came back from it, and because of his mechanical heart, this show goes so heavy and deep on depression and what depression does to people, what can cause the depression, and what kind of an impact that has when he becomes like a dead man walking because of everything that happens with his heart, goes into safety mode where he literally can't feel emotions anymore. It literally turns it off, so he literally can't feel them anymore. I'm like, the portrayal of that. Most unique physically, obviously, is his mechanical heart and the fact that he conducts electricity when his pulse gets too fast. There are many humorous places because of that, and many places because of that. He is the strong, silent type. He doesn't just chatter on for no reason or whatever. He's very silent and very cold-hearted. He's a lizard. That's everything that I can say about that character and why I love that character. He touched a personal level, and he did it so well. There were so many things about the show in general that frustrated me because, the better done one thing is, when the other things aren't done that well, the more frustrating it is. Why do you have to be white? I know not everybody can understand this unless you've been there. I'm not faulting her for not understanding it because she literally can't grasp what he's going through. She literally, there are some things in life that you understand it to a certain level, but you can't really grasp it until you've been there. And I'm not faulting people for that. It's a good thing that she can't grasp it. It's a good thing that she's never been there. That's a good thing. The problem is that she claims that she understands. And the show never corrects that. They continue to claim that she understands. And it is so slap your face obvious that she doesn't. And that's what's frustrating. If you have enough maturity and strength, like the best friend, to admit that there are things about this that you don't understand, just let that go. Just don't pursue it. Just admit that you don't understand that part of it. And connect with the part you can understand. That's good enough. That's strong enough. Do that. And she doesn't. She connects with this part and then claims she gets this part. I'm like, you don't get it. Stop pretending that you understand when you don't. But yeah, that was one of his best acting roles. Strongest. So Gu Chuan is actually very similar, very similar to one of his other characters in personality wise, but they come from very different places and reasons. And the whole way with death and everything, the other character doesn't have that. So this is one very unique thing to Gu Chuan, is his experience with death and what that's done to the past 10 years of his life. What it did to him back then and how it's affected the past 10 years of his life and how it's affecting him now. The way he reacts to I can't take this, but he ends up taking it and then he ends up losing it, and how that affects him and how well it's done. I'm like, that show was done so well. I don't know who they found to write that script and what that person went through in order to write it that well, but my word, did they ever do it well. So that's the thoughts on that one and why that character is so high. Because just naturally, I love people like that who They are consistent with their word. When they say they'll do something, when they say they don't. And like, he is so mature and he is so cool. So there you go with that one. That's it for the moment, because I have 4 characters left to talk about, 2 that I have to talk about at the same time, and then these 2 that are 2 of the main ones that I absolutely love the best. So look forward to it. It's coming.